Greetings all. Today I'll be going over the entirety of the mass killer media iceberg. An iceberg that goes over the lost and found media from various mass killers around the world. Before we start, I will mention that I'll be skipping some of the entries, seeing as some of the subjects are basically the same as previous entries, or they've just been covered too much, especially during the first two layers. That being said, the link to the original iceberg is in the description below, and I heavily recommend you check it out. It has a lot of entries that I won't talk about here, but are definitely very interesting still. Lastly, if you guys want to see more stuff like this, subscribing helps me tremendously, and I'd appreciate it very much, and I'll give you a big old smooch. And with no more delay, let's get right into the iceberg. On March 15th, 2019, the Christchurch mass shooting took place in New Zealand, resulting in the loss of 50 lives within just 40 minutes. The shooter, Brenton Terrell, a 28-year-old Australian gym trainer, had no prior criminal record. What made the tragedy worse was the fact that Terrell had live-streamed the entirety of the incident on Facebook. Prior to the shooting, Terrell was active on extreme right internet forums such as 8chan. In fact, 10 minutes before the shooting, Terrell made a final post on 8chan, promising he'd live-stream the mass murder on Facebook. In the footage, he even makes a reference saying to subscribe to PewDiePie, indicating a complete lack of care. The footage of the live stream is difficult to find as it's been taken down from your basic platforms like Instagram and YouTube. However, a video of Terrence's arrest has been made available and is still roaming around the internet. On April 19th, 1999, Eric Harris and another senior student by the name of Dylan Klebold would go into the school that morning where they would fatally shoot 13 students at the Columbine High School. This went on to the early afternoon where they would finally end their mass killing spree, with both students taking their lives. Before the tragedy, Eric Harris was known to enjoy the game Doom and would frequently make WADs for them. If you don't know, WADs were basically modified changes to the original package of files for games. In this case, he enjoyed modding the game Doom. A lot of the Doom maps Eric made can actually still be played to this day, some of them more disturbing than others. For example, in the trial of the shooting, several tapes were uncovered in Eric's house. In one of these tapes, he claims that he had created a level in Doom that was Columbine High School. The rumored WD was supposedly labeled simply as realdoom.wad. It is still known if this WAD exists or not. If it does, it will probably be remained lost, seeing as both shooters had taken their lives shortly after the shooting, and only a scarce amount of the maps Eric made can actually be played. So until anyone is able to find realdoom.wad, this piece of media will remain lost. The basement tapes refers back to the last entry, where Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, shortly before the shooting, would make 5 videotapes. These tapes describe their motives for the shooting, as well as a sort of kill list, among other disturbing things the Deeply Troubled Boys would talk about. In the December of the same year of the shooting, the tapes were given to a Time magazine reporter, Tim Roche, where he would go on to make an article going over the disturbing details the young boys did in these tapes. The reporter had given the name of the tapes as the Basement Tapes, to which shortly after the family of the victims of the shooting quickly said something, and even suing the county for not releasing the tapes to the victims' families first. The next year, the tapes were put into a vault indefinitely until 2006, however, where in-depth transcripts of the tapes were released, as the county did not want to release the tapes themselves, fearing other young boys would be inspired by the influence of the shooters. In 2015, however, the tapes were permanently destroyed by the county sheriff after a public attempt to release them. If no other copies exist and the destruction of all the 5 tapes is true, then the basement tapes will all probably remain lost forever. Elliot Rodgers was born to the UK in 1991 and would go on to move to California later in life, where he would make a YouTube account in which he would rant from anything to misogyny, anti-feminism, to his troubles with being alone and single. After years of posting onto his channel, May 23rd, 2014, Elliot would go on a mass killing spree, injuring up to 30 people and taking the lives of 6. Elliot then proceeded to crash into a parked car on the street where his mass murder would finally come to an end. He would then unload the remaining bullet onto himself before dying shortly after. Although his channel has been taken down, screenshots and archives still remain up heavily online, as well as his manifesto and even autopsy reports. On April 16th, 2007, Seung-Hui Cho, well just called Cho, a senior at Virginia Tech, would go on to shoot and kill 32 people and wounding 17 others in 2 massive separate attacks. The span of the shooting lasted almost 3 hours and only ended when Cho would commit suicide on the campus. What Cho did is still considered the worst school shooting in U.S. history and the deadliest mass killing in Virginia. During the middle of the shooting, while Cho was rearming his weapons, getting ready for another rampage, he had sent a large file of media to NBC, containing photos, writing, and a half-hour video of his various rantings. In the writing included a 23-page manifesto where he names various political figures, blaming the innocent lives lost by Cho to be their fault. Although Cho had given the NBC almost half an hour of footage, they decided to give only 2 minutes of it to the public, probably because that's what Cho would have wanted them to do. The rest of the footage Cho gave to the NBC still remains with them, along with his manifesto. Peyton Gendron, an 18-year-old white supremacist, went on a racist terrorist attack where he left 10 dead and 3 wounded at a supermarket in Buffalo. It's unclear the exact idea of the shooting, but most agree it to be a racially fueled mass murder, seeing as a white supremacist logo was on the firearm he was using, as well as later admitting to hate crimes in court. Peyton also didn't live anywhere near Buffalo. The previous days, Peyton drove to a city which he knew had predominantly African Americans. During the attack, Peyton was equipped with a GoPro attached to a helmet, as well as heavy military equipment, even including a body shield, which stopped the bullet of one security guard who was unfortunately taken by Peyton during the shooting. Using the GoPro on Peyton's helmet, he was able to live stream a part of it onto Twitch, where the stream was taken down only minutes after. Most of the footage remains lost, however there are still clips floating around the internet as well as various CCTV footage. A Uvalde High School student, Salvador Ramos, purchased 2 assault rifles only days after turning 18, which he used the morning of the mass murder of Robb Elementary. He would go on to take 19 children's lives and 2 teachers' lives that morning in Texas until he was fatally shot by authorities. What made the event so controversial was the decisions made by police officers, shown by the security camera footage, who waited for more than an hour outside the classroom Ramos was inside, only to finally enter to engage and stop him. The accompanying body footage shows one of the officers, Ruben Ruiz, being held back by the other officers and prevented from rescuing his wife, a Robb Elementary teacher, who is inside one of the classrooms dying of a gunshot wound. The footage of the tragic event remains up, showing the delays the police officers took to not engage with the shooter that day. Valentine's Day 2018, Nikolas Cruz opened fire to students and staff at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Miami. He would kill up to 17 people and almost fatally wounding 17. The CCTV footage was only released in bits and pieces, showing Cruz roaming the halls of the empty school looking for victims to take in his mass murder. What makes this case so interesting to me is not the CCTV footage, rather the contents of Cruz's phone, which was released in a full document going over the various things Cruz looked up the days leading to the shooting. In the document, Cruz would look up videos to hype himself up for the shooting, including music videos and different types of school shootings that had happened in the past in a way to take some sort of sick inspiration. What makes it especially disturbing for me is Cruz's saved images, showing Nazi and racist imagery, as well as small creatures like birds and raccoons Cruz would shoot and kill. During 2008, Randy Stair started a YouTube channel called Pioneers Production, in which he would make skits and other vlog type content. However, since this channel wasn't getting as much attention as he wanted, Randy opened another account by the name of Ember's Ghost Squad, deciding to put all his focus on this new channel. While Randy did all this content making, he had a side job, making money at a grocery store. Late into one of the nights on June 8th, 2017, Randy would shoot and murder 3 of his coworkers and later taking his own life as well. Shortly before this deadly night shift, Randy posted media fire links, which included his journal, manifesto, and suicide tape, along with many other strange things. The suicide tapes obviously weren't recordings of Randy's suicide, rather just Randy talking in front of the camera and expressing his thoughts. The link was taken down only a day after it was posted, seeing as the content came from someone who would commit such a graphic murder. They were re-uploaded to YouTube, where they would be quickly taken down again, but not before users could download the content from the link. The suicide tapes, along with his manifesto, still remain up in bits and pieces today online. Following shortly after the 9/11 attacks at 1 p.m., the company EW Scripps suspended the broadcasting briefly for a few days, although the exact amount of days is unknown. The ending of the broadcast was able to be recorded as the programming went down. The clip is almost eerie with soft music in the background as the program suddenly cuts to the still of this.
HGTV's exciting hour of appraisals and antiques continues. Coming up next at the auction.
Sack of People by Apathy was a grunge rock album released in 2000 with lead guitarist/vocalist Luke Helder, Mike Stanton on the drums, and Eric Helscher on bass. The album did okay on releasing, selling some CDs in stores before being pulled out for not selling enough. They also sold their CDs at events and concerts, which would hold out for about $8. After 2 years after the release of the album, however, Luke Helder, leader of the band, would go on a bombing spree across America. He would go about this by planting different pipe bombs in mailboxes across the US. He picked out the locations specifically though, this way the bombings would make a smiley face appear on the map. This gave Helder the name of the smiley face bomber. Shortly after the bombings, the CDs were sold and tracks were lost. Only 2 of the original 12 tracks from Apathy's album remain up today. I'm unsure what this entry is talking about exactly, as Jared Lee Loughner never had a Tumblr account to what I've found. Jared did, however, have a MySpace account where he would frequently give political ramblings for neither left or the right party, instead showing a very anti-government approach, claiming that the amendments that protected African American voting rights were actually ways to mind control US citizens. Beyond this insane belief, Jared also held a deep hatred for U.S. Representative Gabby Gilfords, who he would frequently talk about, even meeting the representative earlier in 2007 during a local Meet Your Congress type event. Carrying this hatred, Jared would make a final post to MySpace where he apologizes to what can only be assumed are family or close friends, begging them not to be mad at him, before he would go to another local Meet Your Congress type event where he would shoot Gabby Gilfords along with killing 5 others and injuring up to 18. However, Gabby Gilfords actually made a full recovery to what I found, although apparently suffering some effects due to the attack. The last post made by Jared is quite disturbing, knowing that he had been planning this attack for years, even making vague ramblings of it on his YouTube channel, Class It Up 10. On November 30th, 2021, Ethan Crumbley, a 15-year-old student at Oxford High School, would go up to shoot to 7 people, killing 4 before later being arrested. A drawing Ethan made shows the moment right before he'd go on to commit the massacre, showing drawings of guns and writings about his struggling mental health. CCTV footage of the massacre remains lost, however some cell phone footage taken by the victims that day remain, showing them fleeing away from the high school. Ethan was also seen in CCTV footage showing the days leading up to the shooting, as Ethan practices at a shooting range with his mother using the same gun he would use to take 4 lives. During a fun carnival parade in Volkmarsen, Maurice Pahler took his car out for a ride, later ramming straight through the carnival at up to 40 miles an hour, injuring more than 100 people, throwing some in the air up to 40 feet. However, thankfully, no one would die that day, only sustaining injuries. No motive was given during the account, however, it was known that Pahler was supposedly had been recording the event with a dash cam, making it seem like the event was premeditated and even planned. However, the footage remains lost and only was mentioned during Pahler's trial. This entry refers to the footage showing the aftermath of a mass shooting in a Texas restaurant that left up to 22 people dead. On October 16th, 1991, the Texas restaurant was packed with up to 120 people in at once for the lunch rush. Then, at 12:39 p.m., George Hennard, a 35-year-old male, would drive into the restaurant, injuring several people. Thinking it was an accident at first, civilians and staff at the restaurant began helping those who were injured, including George, who was still in his truck. That's when he would get out of the truck, pull out his handgun, and open fire, killing 22 people that day. The footage of the mass shooting is gruesome, showing the lack of mercy in the people he killed. I can only assume the brutality of the footage is what makes it part of it hidden still from the public, as only portions of the footage has been released, as well as the crime scene walkthrough showing the aftermath of the event. The 2017 Las Vegas shooting was a tragic event, leaving 60 people dead and over 800 injured. During the shooting, there was numerous 911 calls made by witnesses and survivors, which captured the chaos and horror of the situation. The contents of the 911 calls were released to the public in the weeks following the shooting and provided a harrowing account of the events that took place. In many of the calls, the sounds of gunshots and screams could be heard in the background, while the callers pleaded for help and described the carnage they were witnessing. The release of the 911 calls were controversial, with some arguing that it was important for the public to hear the full extent of the tragedy, while others believed that the graphic nature of the call was traumatizing for the families of the victims and survivors. Either way, only some of the calls were able to be released, and the rest remained lost and unreleased. The infamous Sandy Hook shooting happened on the 14th of December, starting on the early morning, where Adam Lanza killed his 52-year-old mother, Nancy Lanza, before taking her car and driving to the nearby Sandy Hook Elementary School. A live outside camera then captures Adam as he walked past the security camera system, shooting the camera with it. The 911 calls would first start at 9:30 a.m. when Adam began to take the lives of up to 20 children and 6 adult staff at the school. Most footage of the attack has been lost, although various crime scenes of the event, as well as some of the audio from 911 calls, have been released, showing the chilling horror of one of the biggest school shootings in the world. I'm not sure where to add this, but during the investigation, police found a spreadsheet Adam had made documenting almost every mass murder case and the weapons that were used, along with, unsurprisingly, writings about the Colombian school shooting Adam had taken inspiration from. Shortly after the Austin bombings, Mark Conditt would take his life on March 21st, 2018, as police closed in on the 28-year-old for the multiple series of bombings that killed 2 and injured up to 5 people. Mark would go on to make a 25-minute-long video confession before his death. In the confession, Mark talks about his 6 bombs that he made, 5 of which actually exploding, as well as giving light into his mental health. Mark describes himself as a psychopath, explaining his plan to take the 7th bomb he created, which was later used to take his life, would be used at a crowded McDonald's if police had ever gotten too close to him. However, thankfully, this did not become true. Mark would plant these bombs in a FedEx facility, which was actually even captured on a security camera, showing as Mark just walks into the facility dropping off the deadly packages without a second thought. The shot of Mark using his 7th bomb as police circle around his truck also remain up as well, and serve as a brutal reminder of what Austin bombing actually was. The Boston Marathon bombing saw 2 terrorists whose names I definitely can't pronounce blow up both sides of the Boston Marathon, killing up to 3 people and injuring more than 200. The footage shown to the public shows one of the terrorists placing the bombs, which were specifically pressure cooker bombs, right next to an 8-year-old boy. The first bomb would go off, sending people in a panic running away, before the second bomb went off, taking more lives. I'm not sure which footage of the entry is talking about specifically, as a lot of the video has been released for the massacre, seeing as it was a pretty public event, but either way, a lot of the tragic footage remains up today. A shooting spree in Memphis, Tennessee saw 3 lives taken on the 7th of September. The perpetrator, Ezekiel Kelly, started his rampage at midnight, taking the life of D. Wayne Tunstall, and would only end his rampage after shooting 5 more people and being caught following a high-speed chase from Memphis to Mississippi from police. The shooting spree, which lasted more than 6 hours, saw Kelly live stream to Facebook halfway through, warning that there should be a citywide lockdown, which is so odd, seeing the person who's going around shooting people for 6 hours warn people to stay inside, but yeah. The particular live stream, however, has been taken down and only small screen recordings of it as well as screenshots remain. This entry refers to, yet again, another mass church shooting where Dylan Roof, a white supremacist, killed up to 9 people during a Bible study in South Carolina, which ended in a manhunt where Dylan was arrested and later sentenced to death. Dylan was previously known to have posted Nazi and other racist imagery online and posted other various uneducated ramblings on race. He actually even posted a manifesto which supposedly can be read now. Only some of the crime scene photos of the event were released publicly, and the rest, only being shown in court, remain unreleased to this day. During a regular showing of Batman in the Aurora Theater located in Colorado, James E. Holmes would suddenly enter the theater, shooting almost everyone there that day, leaving 12 dead. Some CCTV footage as well as photos of the shooting have been released, and one that's particularly scary to me is CCTV footage showing James entering the theater. It's scary how normal he really seems, even holding a door open for a person passing by, unaware of what was really about to happen. The rest of the CCTV footage as well as photos of the event remain lost and unreleased to this day. The University of North Carolina at Charlotte saw 6 people go to the hospital, 2 of which dying on arrival. All by Andrew Terrell, a former UNCC student who was later arrested at the scene. The motive for his attack is still unknown, although in court his attorney made the point of being too stressed for student debt, but I mean, who isn't? Footage of the attack remains scarce, although reportedly Andrew had actually recorded part of the attack on his cell phone, but I meant to find this footage anywhere, only mentions of it. During a terrorist attack on French Kosher supermarket, up to 4 Jewish people were killed, including 15 hostages taken that were only released when police stormed the siege, killing both terrorists. The attack saw both gunmen demanding one of the hostages to shut down the security cameras, causing footage to be lost. However, one of the gunmen supposedly wore a GoPro during the attack, with one hostage saying they saw them take out the memory card and put it into a computer during the siege. However, the footage of the GoPro remains lost or unreleased, with scarce mention. The Aurora Castillo Tapes give a disturbing look into the mind of a case of murders. A tape recorded just before Castillo would shoot and kill his father, as well as shooting 2 students at the Orange High School in Florida. In the tapes, Castillo talks about the alleged abuse he was facing at the hands of his father, which reflects that of the journal he kept prior to the shootings. In it, he goes over how he bought a shotgun and was going to commit self-not-alive. He also describes fantasies he had leading up to the shooting, with the last entry being directly after Castillo shot and killed his father. All in all, a lot of the media of the case remain up, including the tapes. Pekka Avun, also known as Natural Selector 89 on YouTube or later Stormgeist 89, was one of the first quote-unquote YouTube killers in the Jokela school shooting, where he would kill up to 8 people, become one of the biggest mass shootings in Finland at the time. Pekka before this would frequently post on his YouTube channel until his account Natural Selector 89 was banned and Stormgeist 89 was made. On his channel, Pekka posted vlog-type content talking about his obsession with various school shootings, including, of course, the Colombian shooting. One of the last videos that Pekka would post was a disturbing video showing a picture of Jokela High School before fading into deep red edited pictures of himself. A lot of the videos from the channels have been lost. On November 18th, over 900 men, women, and children would die at the hands of the American cult leader Jim Jones, who would call it a revolutionary suicide rather than a tragic loss of life. Before this, Jim Jones would found a cult called the People's Temple, whose supposed main goals were to create a society free of problems of class and race. Later, though, in which in fear of claims of tax evasion and allegations of abuse, Jim would begin to lease land from the Guyanese government in 1974 to build his church's agricultural program, as well as move his people there, away from the bad social light Jim had found himself in. The land Jim leased would later be known as Jonestown. However, later, in November 1978, Leo Ryan, a U.S. congressman, would, after multiple concerns from family members and former members of the church, set out an investigation, taking a camera crew with him to record his findings into Jonestown to see if the allegations of Jim's abuse is really true. On arrival, everything seemed somewhat fine, with even a celebratory event happening for Ryan's arrival. However, days into the trip, prisoners slowly started to reveal the horrors of Jonestown, claiming to be working in prison camps and begged the congressman for freedom. Jones very obviously didn't like this and saw it as a betrayal. For that, he ordered some of his most loyal followers to kill Ryan's crew, as well as order everyone in the church to kill themselves, as a way to make a message to the people. The footage remains somewhat up, including a walkthrough of the Jonestown land and the people who lived amongst it. However, the killing of Ryan's crew, including the hour interview with Jim Jones himself, remains lost. The Burkett tape refers to the news recording taken just after the second plane hit the Twin Towers on 9/11. The footage is honestly kind of brutal, showing people's initial reactions and the horror of it all. The opening part of the recording is terrifying, showing one of the towers collapse and the reporter and cameraman running for their life as the smoke and debris falls from the sky. The 20-minute long recording remains up on YouTube. The Mcdonalds Massacre was the deadliest mass shooting for its time, before being passed by Luby's shooting, which is also an earlier entry on this list. The massacre remains one of the worst shootings to this day in California history and saw the death of 21 people. After the massacre, footage was released showing a walkthrough of the crime scene and the lifeless bodies of the victims that day. Inspired by the likes of Brenton Tarrant, Hugo Jackson, a 15-year-old boy from Sweden, planned a mass murder attack in March of 2021 at his local high school, planning to stab as many people as he could, all while streaming the massacre on Twitch. The idea, although not turning out exactly how he wanted, resulted in only one teacher being stabbed, which, to what I know, has thankfully made a full recovery. His plan, along with screenshots of the stream, can be found online, although the original stream has been taken down. Included in his plan, by the way, is the fact that he wanted to have a playlist going over during the event, but while he was getting arrested, the song Don't Stop Me Now was allegedly playing, so that's nice. During a normal Madden tournament, David Katz, a known previous Madden player, who was supposedly quite good, winning a tournament in 2017, would later shoot and kill 2 people, injuring 10, not including David, who took his own life that day. Right before the game, David, also known as Bread, his nickname for the match, when losing in a Madden match, would soon go on to reject the handshake of the winner and left the building. Not 5 to 10 minutes later, David returned from his car, where he kept 2 handguns and would go on to shoot both Ellie Clayton and Taylor Robertson, both extremely important figures in their respective communities. The footage of the event remains lost, however, a clip was recorded during the live stream of the tournament and remains up on YouTube. During a late-night New Year's Eve stream on the former live streaming app, Periscope, Matthew Rail would go on a drunken rant about his roommate who had previously tried to kick him out, as well as getting into a fight with him. At some point during the stream, a 911 call was made by another tenant in the apartment in the concern of the yelling from Matthew's stream. Although they would later leave, seeing as nothing had actually happened and was just a noise complaint, something common for apartments. However, later that night, another 911 call was made, this time by Matthew himself. The reason for the call is somewhat unclear to me, although it seems that it might have actually been a reason to lure the officers, including Deputy Zachary Parrish, whom Matthew would fatally shoot along with 3 other deputies and 2 civilians before dying in a gunfight with SWAT officers after firing over 100 shots. The drunken ranting livestream had supposedly captured the shootout as well, but only the beginning of the stream where Matthew talks exists, and even that video remains in pieces. This entry refers to the abundant amount of online media left by William Ashton, who was responsible for the 2017 Aztec school shooting that left up to 2 dead, not including William himself. William's online presence ranged from his numerous YouTube accounts, his most popular account being Vance Stone, to his Encyclopedia Dramatica account. If you're unfamiliar, the ED is basically a shock Wikipedia type known to have racist or homophobic remarks, jokes, ideas, whatever you want to call it. William would frequent the site and was even an admin, of course, supposedly posting hundreds of entries to the site. This edgelord behavior will carry on to many of his Steam accounts, reviewing games like Wolfenstein and Hatred, where he would comment anti-Semitic reviews because, of course, he did. Crime scene photos of the aftermath, as well as William's many internet accounts exist up today. However, I was unable to find his ED account, so until then, most of the official accounts remain lost. Philip, a white supremacist located in Norway, in fear of his white race being quote-unquote exterminated, would plan a now unsuccessful attack to kill as many people as he could at a nearby mosque, all while streaming it on his GoPro. Before Philip would start the stream, on August 10th, 2019, Philip was home alone with his stepsister when in an argument would shoot her 3 times in the head, killing her with no mercy. Then, almost immediately after the murder, Philip would strap on a GoPro and start streaming, planning to drive to his local mosque, killing as many people as he could. However, when arriving, Phillips broke in through a locked door and opened fire inside the center, hitting no one. After only 4 shots, Phillips was stopped by a 65-year-old man at the mosque, and Phillips was headlocked by this grandpa until being arrested. The stream of the attack has been somewhat found, with the audio of Philip being stopped on YouTube, as well as some screenshots from the stream remain up. The Trollhättan 2015 school attack in the early morning of October 22nd saw 21-year-old Anton London Peterson take the lives of 3 people during an allegedly racially fueled ambush and remains the deadliest attack on a school in Sweden history. Anton, who, by the way, was dressed up like fucking Darth Vader in the morning of the massacre, was equipped with a sword for the attack as well as wearing a World War II Nazi helmet. Anton would drive to a nearby specially selected school that he picked himself, which was known to have predominantly an immigrant population. On arrival, Anton would immediately attack a 20-year-old teaching assistant, Laban Eskandar, killing them immediately, to which he then stabbed the abdomen of Ahmed Hassan, a 15-year-old student who would later die at the hospital from injuries. At this point, CCTV footage shows Anton roaming the halls of the school that morning, searching for more victims to take the lives of. During this roaming period, Anton was actually stopped by 2 students, not knowing what he'd done, asking for a picture with Anton, thinking his outfit and sword were just a early Halloween costume. Anton agreed to take a picture with the 2 boys, and you can even see the blood drip down from Anton's sword as he poses with them. After this, 42-year-old teacher Nazir Amaso was attacked by Anton, Asmo later dying of injuries 6 weeks later. By this time, police had arrived at the scene and confronted Anton, where he was subsequently shot, later also dying from injuries at the hospital. The CCTV footage remains up of the attack and is horrifying. On June 12, 2016, Omar Mateen, a 29-year-old male, would take up to 49 lives that night, as well as injuring more than 50 people at the gay Orlando club Pulse nightclub. The massacre would only end during a 3-hour standoff between Omar and police, when Omar would be fatally shot at 5:17 a.m. after several officers fired more than 150 bullets into him. During the attack, Omar would call 911 shortly after it begun. The 911 call made from Omar has been released to the public. However, other 911 calls made by actual victims that day stayed somewhat unpublished and remain lost. Information about this entry remain very scarce. I mean scarce. From what I can find, it's talking about a now lost episode of Dr. Phil, where the mother of Robert Arthur Hawkins, known for the West Roads Mall shooting that left 9 people dead, would come on to the talk show, including one of the survivors of the actual rampage itself, who goes on to tell the story of what happened to the mother. Like I said, this entry is extremely scarce, and the only thing I could find from this episode is a small intro clip. In the late summer night of July 22nd, 2015, in the quiet Oklahoma town of Broken Arrow, a 911 call was made by 12-year-old Daniel Bever. In the call, Daniel is in panic, screaming and yelling heard in the background as Daniel explains that his two brothers, 18-year-old Robert Bever and 16-year-old Michael Bever, were attacking the family. Daniel that day was also later taken in the attack by his own brother, along with Daniel's two parents and two of his siblings. In the investigation into the brothers, a flash drive was discovered, which also had multiple cameras and surveillance systems that recorded the house. It was later found out that the brothers had actually planned on recording 2 videos of the massacre, one video showing both of the brothers along with the bodies that would be shown in court if made, and another video of the brothers that could be posted online where they brag about their murders. However, these videos have not been released or even confirmed to exist. It seems as though this might have been another fantasies the killers planned out. And one of the biggest mass shootings of Texas, the Sutherland Spring Church saw 26 dead by gunman Devin Patrick Kelly. In the attack, a back camera used to upload church hearings onto YouTube was recording for the morning. The same camera would capture Devin walking into the church at 11:20 in the morning using a semi-rifle to shoot 26 people. This whole event lasted around 11 minutes and saw Devin going from pew to pew in search of anyone he could take. The footage, of course, remains lost in respect to the families and victims. Alec McKinney and Devin Eric Harrison both walked into the STEM School Highlands Ranch carrying handgun on arm while other guns hidden in their guitar cases. These two boys, on May 7th, 2019, would then go on to take the life of 1 and injure 8 students before being stopped by other classmates. Before the shooting, Alex claimed to have planned the whole thing out with Devon, although Devon claiming he was forced into it by McKinney, though from what I've heard that seems somewhat maybe not all the truth. The plan was to break into their parents' gun storage and use whatever was inside to target both sides of the school. Alex, who targeted the middle school section, injured 4 before being tackled by a security guard. On April 29th, 2019, barely a week before the attack, a comment was posted onto the Wikipedia site, specifically on the wiki entry of the STEM school itself. The comment was replying to one of the tidbits of information on the site, which read, "Anti-suicide programs are implemented in the school to help lower the chances of suicide and school shootings." The commenter, assumingly one of the boys, in reply, would say, "Do they work? We shall see." The comment, of course, has since been deleted, along with other forms of media from the event, including police body cam footage. During a normal busy day at the Fort Lauderdale Airport in Florida, Esteban Santiago Ruiz killed up to 5 people, leaving 6 with almost fatal injuries. Although no motives have been given for the attack specifically, it's known that during trial, Santiago was diagnosed with schizophrenia, to which he was thankfully medicated for later. Even if his mental health might not be the definitive for the cause, it definitely was a major one. CCTV footage of the attack actually does remain somewhat up, which was leaked to TMZ by a deputy with access to the case. However, the same officer would later be suspended, and the rest of the footage remains lost. After a shooting spree lasting hours, spanning from Midland to Addison, Texas, Seth was cornered at a nearby movie theater where he was shot and killed by officers after Seth killed 8 people and injuring more than 20. A true motive for his attack also remains scarce, though. A phone call was supposedly made 15 minutes before the shooting, where Seth goes on rambles about how he felt to a now unknown caller. Seth also, interestingly, was fired from his job only hours before the spree. CCTV footage of the attack obviously remains kept tight, but witnesses to the massacre captured multiple videos using cell phone footage. I obviously can't show any of these because I don't feel like getting my ass handed to me by YouTube, but just know a lot of the footage is actually pretty brutal, with one witness even being shot while recording. This entry follows the not only YouTuber, but social media influencer Naseem Agdam, who is a vegan animal rights activist. and Nassim would post various videos talking about her beliefs, as well as clips of protest Nassim would frequent. This isn't the only types of post Nassim would make. For example,
Yüreği güzel oyna, eşiği güzel oyna, Nassim kızım oyna, yeşil kızım oyna.
Whatever that is. Along with these posts, Nassim would make videos claiming to be suppressed on YouTube, being demonetized on multiple videos. It's speculated that this belief alone was the reason Nassim would enter the YouTube headquarters in California at 12:46 p.m. and shoot 3 people before later taking her life with a self-inflicted gunshot to the heart. Thankfully, none of the people injured that day died and remain well even today. As for Nassim's channel though, it was obviously promptly deleted. However, there's many archives of her video even up still today, including her weird dancing video, whatever that is. The Finnish mass killer Matti Sari, better known for the school shooting occurring on the 23rd of September 2008, saw Matt supposedly plan this attack for more than 5 years. This long plan started with, you guessed it, videos of the Colombian shooting and how Matt fantasized about the attack, as so many of these loser-ass mass killers do. Matt would post these fantasies on YouTube comments, as well as showing off his weapons, which is one of the only videos that remains up from Matt's channel. The shooting itself saw 11 people dead, including Matt himself, who shot himself in the head before later dying at the hospital. During a standoff between police and Matt, after all students were evacuated from the school, of course, he made a phone call to his friend where he says his goodbyes and how sorry he was. Shortly after this, Matt took his own life. The phone call remains lost, but clips and screenshots from Matt's now deleted channel remain up. The Erfurt Massacre was yet again another school shooting where Robert killed 16 people, including 13 staff members and 2 students, along with 1 officer during a standoff before taking his own life. Robert would enter the school that morning before heading to the stalls, changing into an all-black outfit for edgy purposes, I'm assuming, before going on his rampage. The reason for this massacre has been speculated to be school-related, as before this, Robert would skip school frequently, causing him to be expelled, which in turn made him ineligible for any jobs. It's thought that this reason was what made Robert go on this spree, taking the lives of so many. Robert, before being expelled, had already had a history of being interested in mass killers, which, yet again, you know them, you hate them. The Colombian shooter was one of the many monsters Robert fantasized about. Crime scene photos of the aftermath actually does exist online, although I can't show many of them, obviously. They do remain somewhat found. Cultural Philistine was a YouTube channel created by the infamous Adam Lanza, known for the Sandy Hook shooting, one of the worst school shootings in America. His online presence before the tragedy included his YouTube channel created in 2011, where most of his content included a black background with his voiceover going over a range of things. Most of this included ramblings of religion, pedophilia, mental health, and much more. The channel, despite being created in 2011, wouldn't be discovered for another decade until users on the Mass Killer subreddit would dig it up, only for the channel to be deleted promptly after. Before his YouTube channel in 2006, Adam was known to frequent a forum website to, unsurprisingly, the Colombian high school tragedy. He would also later go on to create a wiki account under the name of KN Bread, where he would edit pages about shooters or terrorism. Darian Aguilar, an extreme Colombian high school fanboy, at the age of 19, will go on to use a 12-gauge shotgun to randomly kill 2 employees of Zoomies, a skateboard gear shop, before taking his own life inside the Columbia Mall. Dressed like his idols, Darian would take a selfie and upload it onto Tumblr mere seconds before he would commit the act. With the caption, "I had to do this. Today is the day. On previous days I tried this. I woke up with anxiety, regret, and hope for a better future. This day I did it." The selfie remains lost due to it being unreleased, as the police chief felt it would be better not to let him gain any notoriety. The Father's Day Massacre was a bank robbery that resulted in the loss of $200,000 and the 4 deaths of the security officers in the United Bank in downtown Denver. Something that makes this case stand out from the others on the Iceberg is the fact this case actually remains unsolved. The bank robbery, taking place on Sunday, June 16th, 1991, on, of course, Father's Day, resulted in the arrest of James W. King 3 weeks later. The trial was held on national television and can be viewed online. A search of his house found no physical evidence connecting him to the robbery, however, including the 200 grand stolen. However, what was found was a detailed map of the bank building interior in a folder marked plans and 5 phony ID cards containing King's picture with different aliases. Yet somehow after finding that, James was acquitted and found not guilty, living out the rest of his life and later dying in 2013. Now, I'm not saying this guy did it, but I don't think a normal person just keeps interior plans of banks under a folder named plans. I'm astonished that this case was kept unsolved. After being recently fired, disgruntled airline employee David Burke boarded Southwest Airline Flight 1771 on December 7th, 1987, where he would shoot his former boss, several passengers, and both pilots, causing the plane to crash, killing the 43 people on board. Although not officially being listed on the FBI report, the CVR is said to have recorded the cockpit door opening, and a female, presumed to be the flight attendant, told the cockpit crew, "We have a problem." A shot was fired, presumably killing the flight attendant, and Burke announced, "I'm the problem." 2 more shots are heard, indicating the pilot's dead. However, like I mentioned, the cockpit voice recording remains lost. The Tiananmen incident was a mass murder that happened in Beijing, China on September 20th, 1994. The perpetrator, Tiananmen, would start his rampage on his former military base in Tuxegon County by killing his officer and several of his fellow soldiers with a stolen Type 81 assault rifle from the base. Tian then fled the base, stealing a military jeep and driving in the direction of downtown Beijing, where he would then seemingly open fire on any victims he could, even including an Iranian diplomat and his son. Despite being one man, Tian managed to keep both police and military units at bay, resulting in the death of several police officers. The shootout would finally end after Tian was cornered and shot by a nearby military sniper. Small clips, including aerial footage of the event, remain online, as well as a piece of amateur footage seemingly taken by a witness of the event. Kim Ver-Singil entered the Dawson College on September 13th, 2006 at 12:42, where he would shoot over 20 people, killing only 1 student, not including Kim himself, who would commit suicide after being shot once in the arm by a police officer. The event would only last 8 minutes, despite Kim carrying 3 different weapons and multiple bags of ammunition, which he even made a hostage carry with him inside the school. Shortly before Kim would commit suicide, he wrote a short note taped to his body, although I'm unable to find any photos of it online. However, pictures of his activity on the site vampirefreaks.com under his alias Fatality666 do exist. Kim was frequently active on the site, taking selfies and even idolizing, yet again, the Colombian boys. On July 7th, 2016, Micah Xavier Johnson took the lives of 5 people and injuring 11 after ambushing the end of the protest against the recent killings by police of Alton Sterling. Johnson then hid in the nearby El Centro College campus for several hours until police were finally able to put a stop to his rampage using a remote-control robot bomb. This actually marked the first ever use of a remote-control robot bomb deployed by U.S. law enforcement. Footage of the POV from the robot remains lost, however body cam footage, pics of the robot's POV, and even the aftermath can be found online. On December 5th, 2007, 19-year-old Robert Hawkins shot and killed 8 people, injuring 4 others in a Von Moore department store at Westroads Mall in Omaha, Nebraska, before committing suicide himself. The Smoking Gun actually released a copy of Hawkins' 3-page suicide note, which included a note to his family, one to his friends, and his last will, below which he signed the name and included his social security number. CCTV footage even exists of the event, showing Robert walking into the mall that day, carrying the weapon he'd used in his massacre. The Red Lake shooting, which remains the deadliest school shooting in Minnesota, saw 16-year-old Jeff Weiss take the lives of 9, not including himself, and injuring the same amount. Starting at his grandfather's house, he would take the lives of his grandfather along with his girlfriend, where he then proceeded to take his grandfather's firearm, bulletproof vest, and along with his car, where he would then drive to the Red Lake Senior High School. Jeff then took the lives of several more and injuring many more before committing suicide after being surrounded by officers. Jeff's online presence before this had been quite active, ranging from fanfics to even flash animations he'd make himself. A good majority of these still exist online, including a 60-page report going over his online activity on a storytelling/fanfic writing site. His animations also still exist on YouTube, depicting very edgelord shit. On the Jewish day of Yom Kippur at the synagogue in Paul Sylvester neighborhood of Halle, Germany, Stephen Ballet, all while streaming on Twitch, would attempt to enter the synagogue. He would fire gunshots at the door and even using amateur explosives at an attempt to blow open the door. These attempts were unsuccessful and in frustration would kill a woman who was walking by the synagogue. Stefan would then drive to a nearby Turkish restaurant where he would open fire through the front window, where a customer was injured and later killed from this. By this point, police had surrounded Stefan, in which he would flee in his rented Volkswagen. The chase would last 50 miles and finally resulted in the arrest of Stefan. Security camera footage does actually exist of the event, showing Stefan unsuccessfully trying to open the door. The pre-mentioned Twitch stream also exists online, even showing the gruesome death of the first life he took. A rampage lasting over 12 hours on February 8th in Thailand saw the deaths of 29 people, leaving more injured by the hands of Thama, over a simple business conflict between him and his military commander. Thama would start the attack by killing his commander along with his mother-in-law. He would then drive to his army base where he would raid the camp, killing 2 others in the process. With the stolen Humvee and injuring 5 more, Thama drove to a nearby Buddhist temple and killed 8 civilians and 1 police officer. He then arrived at Terminal 21 Korat shopping mall, where he would start shooting indiscriminately, killing 12 more, then detonating a gas cylinder. Thama at this point held siege, not before killing 2 others and taking 16 people hostage at the upper part of the mall. Police unsuccessfully would storm the building in response to open fire, leaving 2 officers dead. Thama would take siege lasting several hours, where he would even livestream the event to Facebook, sharing posts and memes as he did. Screenshots from Thama's Facebook exist, including selfies, pictures from the livestream, and even the memes he posted. One of the last images he would post before having his account suspended is simply the text, "Should I surrender?" During a regular concert of the band Damage Plan on December 8th, 2004 in Columbus, Ohio, 4 people were murdered and 3 others were wounded by the hands of Nathan Gale, a former U.S. Marine. Gale was stopped only 3 minutes later after a police officer killed and stopped his murders. The main target of the attack was guitarist Darrell Abbott. Though motives are still unclear, it seems Gale targeted Abbott due to his recent departure of the former band Pantera, in which Gale had no relation to. However, it's speculated that Gale's actual motive was from his paranoid schizophrenia and delusions that Abbott was actually stealing his own song lyrics. Yet I am unable to find any of these songs or if they even existed. What does exist online of the event is the tragic cam footage from the concert showing Gale going through his murders, as well as him taking drum technician John Cat Brooks hostage. This entry is so strange to me, happening in Florida's Epcot Disney. You'd think this event would be easy to research, but no, not even a formal wiki page exists about it. On September 12, 1992, a 37-year-old man named Alan J. Ferris from Rochester, New York, entered Epcot after the park closed its gates for the night, and gave fire using a shotgun at 3 security guards, demanding to see his ex-girlfriend who worked at the park. He fired 4 blasts at the guards and took 2 guards hostage in a restroom near the Journey into Imagination Pavilion. As Orange County Sheriff's deputies surrounded the area, the man released his hostages and emerged from the restroom with the shotgun held to his chest, exclaiming the officers to fire at him. After a few words were exchanged, Ferris shot and killed himself. Thankfully, nobody was seriously injured or killed besides Ferris himself. CCTV footage of the event does not exist or has been completely lost, which is not hard to imagine. I don't know if Disney would ever want that footage to get out. On August 10th, 1993, Dion Terrell, a 26-year-old man, entered a McDonald's in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and shot 3 people. A man died at the scene, a woman died in the hospital, and a young man was injured in the arm. After that, Terrell took his own life. A tape was found shortly after the attack inside his car, including a 40-minute session of him basically rambling, mentioning his payback on society. All that remains of the tape is 6 minutes of cut portions. The rest of the video remains lost to time. On September 13th, 2017, 15-year-old sophomore Caleb Sharpe brought 2 guns, an AR-15 rifle, and a Colt 1903 pistol to Freeman High School, Washington, where he killed 1 student who was attempting to stop Caleb himself. 3 other students were injured before Caleb surrendered to officers. Caleb was tried as an adult, yet due to COVID-19, the hearing and sentencing was delayed at a whopping 5 years. Finally, on August 19th, Sharpe was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison. CCTV footage of the event remains scarce online, but it does exist, showing him in the halls getting ready for the attack. Before this, Caleb actually had a YouTube channel doing and talking about a variety of things, even showing the same weapon he'd use in the event in his channel. Some of these videos remain up online with various screenshots. During a regular busy Sunday in 2008, Tomohiro Kato rammed a rented truck into a crowd at the crossing of streets in Akihabara, Chiyodo, Tokyo, and at 12:33, Kato hit 5 people with the truck after ignoring the red light. As some people gathered to care for the victims hit with the truck, Kato climbed out of the vehicle and stabbed at least 12 people with a dagger, and according to witnesses, did this all while screaming in a deranged manner. Police chased Kato and cornered him in a narrow alley until police surrounded him, forcing him to surrender. The event left 7 people dead and 10 injured. Kato was eventually sentenced to death and executed in 2022. Apparent dashcam footage was taken inside the rented truck, however, it remains lost. The only remaining media that remains of the event happening live was a bystander who just happened to be live streaming the streets. Only a screenshot of the live stream exists, however, and the rest of it remains lost. On April 22, 2022, Raymond Spencer, armed with 4 rifles modified to fire on fully automatic and mounted with scopes, along with 2 handguns and more than 1,000 rounds of ammunition, positioned himself on the 5th floor of his apartment building adjacent to the Edmund Burke School in Washington, D.C. He proceeded to fire at least 239 shots toward the school and other nearby buildings, wounding 4 people and breaking glass in the school. During the incident, the gunman would record the attack through a camera mounted on his rifle and posted a video of the shooting on 4chan, and even edited the school's Wikipedia page to report the attack he just caused. Thankfully, no one was killed, and the video of the event still remains up online, along with the screenshots of the messages sent to 4chan. "18-year-old student Vladislav Raslyakov killed 20 people and wounded 70 others before subsequently committing suicide during the Kirch Polytechnic College massacre. He committed his rampage using a shotgun and a nail bomb, which destroyed a hallway inside the school, leaving many injured. CCTV footage along with a student recording of the incident remains online, showing him roaming the halls looking for victims. Social media accounts owned by the gunman remain up in the form of screenshots showing his various posts along with messages sent a few days before the massacre, explaining his obsession with suicide and death. Menstrual Munchies was a porno grind metal band with the band member 24-year-old Connor Betts, who was the sole committer of the Dayton shooting that killed 9 people, including his own brother, and wounded 17 others near the entrance of Ned Pepper's Bar in the Origin District of Dayton, Ohio. Porno grind, defined by its extremely lewd depictions of gore and sexual violence, was a defining part of the band, with song titles such as Preteen Daughter, Put Slaughter, and stuffed with medical waste, sexual abuse of a teenage corpse. So, pretty explicit stuff. The band's Facebook page, which had nearly 17,000 likes, and YouTube accounts have all been deleted after the incident, although screenshots and album covers still exist online, along with even some full songs still up on YouTube. On April 9th, Van der Vels, wearing a bulletproof vest and armed with a semi-automatic Smith and multiple other weapons, first got out of his car and shot a person outside, then entered the mall in a small town in the Netherlands and fired more than 100 rounds, killing 6 people and injuring another 17 before he took a pistol and took his own life. Many shoppers in the center panicked before it was evacuated and cornered off. Later that day, one of the injured victims died from their injuries, raising the total number of the deceased to 7. Tristan had left a note in his car stating that the explosives he had left were in 3 malls in the city. These malls were evacuated, although nothing was actually found. Unsurprisingly, Tristan was obsessed with the 1999 Columbian High School massacre and chose the date of the 9th of April because it was the birthday of gunman Eric Harris, and started the attack at 12:08 because it was the time Eric committed suicide. Tristan had also left a manifesto, although it has not been released and nothing of it exists online, though his suicide note, in which he apologizes to friends and family, has been publicly released. Woo Bum-kun was a South Korean policeman and spree killer who murdered 62 people and wounded another 35 others in several villages along South Korea during the night from April 26 to April 27, 1982, that all started from just a fly. On the afternoon of April 26, Woo had an argument with his live-in girlfriend, Chun Mal-soon, after she had woken him up by swatting a fly on his chest. Woo proceeded to then, as a reasonable person would, go to a police station to report the incident. Obviously nothing came of it, and he returned home at 7:30, only to assault his girlfriend before making his way to the armory and gathering several weapons, consisting of 2 M2 carbines, 2 handguns, and at least 180 rounds of ammunition, and 7 hand grenades. Woo then started his rampage at 9:30 by entering his local post office, cutting the telephone lines, and killing 3 phone operators. After this point, he basically goes about his rampage, going from house to house, killing a total of 59 people before he strapped 2 grenades to his chest and detonated them, killing himself and 3 of his hostages he had. However, I'm not sure exactly what this entry is talking about, as in what I've read, I see no mentions of Woo ever recording his actions, although I will say crime scene photos of the event do exist online, as well as previous photos of Woo showing him in his police uniform. The story of Kamikishiki Village is a satirical Japanese resource management strategy game developed by Happysoft and published by Umsoft that was released for PC 98 on June 29, 1995. The game portrays the Shinrikyo cult and the 1995 subway sarin gas attack orchestrated by the same cult that killed 13 commuters, seriously injuring 54 and affecting 980 more. The most common misconception about this entry is that the game was produced by the cult as a form of propaganda, whereas the story of the Kamikishiki village actually portrays and the sarin gas attack quite negatively, mocking its members and showing the footage humiliating the cult, and even art portraying the leader bottling up his bathwater. On September 27, 2001, at 10:30 a.m., Frederick Lebacker entered the canton's Parliament building in the city of Zug, Switzerland, and started shooting in the hall where the members of Parliament were meeting. Frederick was armed with several firearms and wore a homemade orange police vest, letting him enter the Parliament building without a problem. He killed 3 members of the Executive Council and 11 members of the legislature, and wounded 18 politicians and journalists, some heavily. He fired 91 rounds before igniting a homemade bomb, which took his own life. Frederick left a suicide note titled Day of Rage for the Zug Mafia, showing his resentment for the government. A supposed tape recording of the regular government hearing that recorded the whole incident has been recovered, however none of it is yet to be released. In early October 2014, Alan Ruby had stolen a 9mm pistol from his father's pickup truck, and on Friday, October 10th, 2014, he would shoot his own mother, sister, and finally, father. However, it wasn't until 3 days later, when at around 9 a.m. on the 13th of October 2014, Duncan's police received a phone call from the Harubi's housekeeper finding the 3 bodies stuffed inside the family's freezer. Yet, ironically, Alan, not even hours later, was arrested on a completely different charge on the account of credit card fraud. Before this, Alan removed the DVR from the home surveillance system and tossed it into a nearby lake along with the murder weapon. After disposing of the evidence, he drove to Dallas to enjoy the festive football weekend. The footage from the disposed camera remains unreleased, however, screenshots of Alan's social media account still exist, and his Twitter account, which he used to post his day at the football game, remains up to this day. The Minas Gerais shooting was an event that has extremely little coverage. Honestly, the only info I could find about it comes from a Brazilian news website claiming the shooting took place in November of 2019 and that a 17-year-old boy shot one victim in the neck with a small firearm and hurt another with a machete. Both the victims apparently only suffered minor injuries and survived, although almost nothing exists of the topic, with no coverage, thus almost no media exists of the case. On June 26, 1984, in a guard post in Gangwon Province, Korea, Seung-Hui Cho shot and killed 2 platoon members with a fully automatic rifle. He then threw a grenade into the living quarters of his fellow soldiers and hid in some nearby bushes. As some people came dashing out to check the noise, he proceeded to fire at them, killing 12 and injuring 11. 3 more people were additionally killed from stepping on a mine while pursuing him, thus raising the death toll to 15. His motives were revenge against the ones who had bullied him and reportedly abused in the military and had been planning this for months. Afterwards, he fled the South Korean border into North Korea. Cho was not arrested or killed for this event. In fact, he appeared in a few propaganda videos in the years following the shooting. To this day, his exact whereabouts, along with his videos, remain unknown. However, very few screenshots appear online, and apparently the videos do in fact exist somewhere, but I'm not able to find them, nor any more info on where they would be. And that concludes the last tier of the Mass Killer Media Iceberg. I had a lot of fun researching this, so please let me know if you guys want to see more of these types of videos. I will say, you might have noticed that I have skipped a lot of the entries, and mostly that was because I already covered them in the same entry, or the media was completely lost, or maybe it was just CCT footage. And a lot of the entries here on this list are basically just CCT footage that has not been released by police, and I didn't exactly want to cover that. So that being said, please do consider subscribing if you enjoyed the video. Thank you all for watching, and good night.